Hey guys, it's Chuck from Twitter, and today I'm doing something a little bit different. And by different I mean I'm actually filming a video instead of just vlogging a thing that I went to or hanging out with Julia while she kind of films a video. I wanted to make this video to talk about some books I got to read advanced copies of. All the books are coming out this fall and I'm just so excited for them to be out there in the world, and I want you guys to be excited about them too. All of them are YA, all of them have an LGBTQIAP+ protagonist, and all of them were written own voices, which is wonderful. This video is going to be entirely spoiler free. I'm just trying to, share my excitement about these books. So first up, we have Darius the Great is Not Okay by Adib Khorram. This book is about Darius Kellner, who is half Persian on his mother's side, half white on his father's side, and has a lot of trouble finding his place in the world, as most teenagers do. He has a job at a tea store that does not take tea as seriously as he does. It's one of his great passions, along with Star Trek, which is one of the only ways he's able to bond with his father. One of the really funny taglines for this book is that Darius speaks better Klingon than Farsi, which I really appreciated. In addition to a lot of, regular teenage turmoil, Darius also has clinical depression and takes medication for that. It is a condition that he shares with his father, which is another similarity that they share, but one that they don't really love to talk about. And one of Darius's main identity issues comes from the fact that he does not feel Persian enough. He feels like a fractional Persian is what he calls it. His family travels to Iran for what is Darius and his sister's first time to visit their grandfather for what might be their last chance to see him. So Darius heads to Iran and his family, and everything he has always felt he didn't really click with his entire life, and he is so scared to face his grandparents and have to confront the fact that he doesn't speak Farsi that well. He doesn't dress or look like the way a Persian boy is supposed to dress and look. He likes to wear his hair long, and his father's always, tormenting him about it. While he's there, he literally meets the boy next door, Sohrab. Sohrab is the light of this book. He is such a wonderful character. He loves soccer and playing outside. Sohrab calls Darius the Persian pronunciation of his name, which is Darius, I think, Darius. Darius feels a lot of pressure for having that name because, Darius the Great. But he feels like Darius, like he feels himself for the first time ever in his relationship with this boy that he meets. This is not the kind of book where the protagonist explicitly comes out as gay or bisexual or pansexual, what have you, to his family. His parents do ask questions along the lines of, why don't you have a girlfriend? And, who do you like? Things like that. But it is never an issue that Darius himself has to confront. And I actually found that really refreshing because I think in today's day and age, teenagers are met with a culture that is generally more accepting than it was, 15, 20 years ago. But at the same time, we have so many labels for so many things. And I think a lot of kids feel pressured to, adhere to a label and know that that's theirs and kind of cling to it. And obviously you can change your label as many times as you want and no one will fault you for it. We're all just trying to figure ourselves out here. But for a teenager, that kind of feels like the end of the world, and it's scary. And it's maybe something you're not personally ready to deal with yet at 15, 16. And Darius isn't ready to deal with it yet, and he doesn't in this book. But, the author has made it clear that this is a book meant to serve as LGBT representation, and at the end of the book he actually has a list of resources and references. I'm not gonna be able to find the page. And it is own voices, and it's wonderful, and you should totally check it out. Growing up, I never had a book with a Middle Eastern protagonist, and that's so silly to say, to think about, how did I not have that as a kid? But I didn't, I never came across one. And so reading this book meant so much to me. The relationship between Darius and Sohrab is so beautiful. The familial relationships in this book are so well done. Darius's relationship with his mother and his father and his grandparents and even his younger sister is just so organic, and it feels so real. There's so much humor laced in within the really difficult subject matter of the book, and it just makes it so uniquely wonderful in that you can really go from laughing out loud on one page to wanting to cry on the next, but in the best way. It's very cathartic, it's very nice, and you should totally pick it up on August 28th. So this next book I actually don't have a copy of, and the reason I don't have a copy of it is actually quite a funny story. I brought it with me to Greece. I finished it at 2 in the morning the night before classes started, which was really dumb. As I finished, I just couldn't shut up about it, obviously, because I'm me, and one of my roommates asked if she could borrow it, and I said, of course, and she took it to the beach with us. She forgot it at the beach. It was totally an accident. It could have happened to anybody. If you happen to live on the island of Idra and you find washed up upon the shore an annotated copy of Claire LeGrande's Sawkill Girls, I totally recommend you pick it up because it was fantastic. It is a girl power trio that kicks ass in a spooky woodland setting with a fairy tale creature that comes out of the darkness and devours people. How could you not want to read that? First up is Marion. Marion is a newcomer to Sawkill Rock. She just moved there with her mother and her sister after the unexpected death of her father. Marion's mother and sister are both still going through a lot of the grief and the steps of dealing with the death of a family member, and Marion herself feels like because she has to be their rock, she can't really deal with the grief herself, and she always has to be there for her mother and her sister, and she doesn't get to deal with her own emotions. So she has a lot of issues with that going into the story before any of the crazy stuff even starts happening. Next is Zoe. Zoe is the daughter of the sheriff of Sawkill Rock. Sheriff, police chief, detective, something like that. He is a police officer. And Zoe lets us know that over the years, lots of girls have gone missing from Sawkill Rock and are never found. There is a legend on the island of this beast called the Collector, and he takes young girls from the woods and whisks them away and they're never seen again. We all know these stories. One of the fantastic things I thought about Sawkill Girls was that it takes that trope, the missing girls trope, and just flips it on its head. It says like, yeah, no, we're done. And last but certainly not least is Val. Val is the daughter of the family that hired Marion's mother to be their housekeeper. Everything's connected. Val is your typical, like, mean girl in the school system. Zoe hates her. Zoe really doesn't trust Val or her family, and Val knows it, and Val does not like that Zoe's on her that way. Val is involved with the spooky, scary things happening on Sawkill Rock. I'm not gonna count that as a spoiler because it is very obvious right away. Val also has dated almost every boy in school, but doesn't like boys. Val really likes girls. Specifically, Val really likes Marion, and Marion might really like Val, and the fact that Val might be responsible for some pretty horrible things, and it's really interesting to see how that all plays out. Zoe is an asexual character who's just coming to the realization that she identifies as asexual and still has a very close relationship with her now ex-boyfriend. Zoe kind of coming to terms with the fact that she doesn't like sex or want sex, having really strong feelings for her boyfriend and not wanting to do what teenagers are told they're supposed to want to do. On the opposite end of the spectrum, Marion talks about how she dreams about kissing people. She's never given a specific identity as bisexual or pansexual or anything like that. We know that Marion secretly really wants to be wanted by someone else, but again, that whole relationship and the dynamic between her mother, her sister, and herself, it makes it hard for her to be emotionally vulnerable. I think you have to be a certain kind of author to pull off third-person YA, and Claire LeGrande 100% does it. Like, Sawkill Girls is amazing, and I loved it so much. It has such beautiful language and such a great spooky atmosphere. I think like Twin Peaks meets X-Files meets Over the Garden Wall meets Stephen King meets any spooky scary thing you ever watched or enjoyed as a child. But it's also got like X-Men vibes, and it's like super girl power. It's so magical, and the prose is so well done. I literally could not put the book down. I'm the kind of reader that characters are really important to me and I love a good plot, but like really well done prose just kind of, that's my stuff. So definitely pick up a copy of Sawkill Girls by Claire LeGrande on October 2nd. I messed that up on Twitter. It comes out October 2nd. You should totally pick it up. The last book I'm going to get really in depth about in this video is one of my most highly anticipated releases for this year, The Lady's Guide to Petticoats and Piracy by Mackenzi. So Felicity's story picks up just a little bit after Monty's story left off, and while Monty's story was very much also Felicity's story, this time our girl is front and center, and she has a whole ensemble cast of amazing, strong female characters that are added in this story who are brand new. You won't recognize them from last time, but that's totally okay because they are amazing. Specifically Sim and Joanna is my wife. I'm calling dibs now. I really put off starting this book because I was so nervous about it because I loved Gent's Guide so much. It was like going to see the new Incredibles movie. Like, is it worth it? What if it doesn't live up to the hype? But this totally lived up to its predecessor in every possible way. It is so witty and fun and adventurous and just full of like the best kinds of female camaraderie. Just like Sawkill Girls, we get that like girl power trio, which I absolutely love. October is gonna be a smash month for feminism. So where the story picks up, Felicity is back in the UK, but in Scotland actually. And she is trying her darndest. She wants to be accepted to medical school and officially become certified to run a medical practice. You know, the certificates and all the credentials and everything that the world tells you you need to be a real doctor, Felicity wants. And it's really important for her to do it that way, the way all of the men before her have done. The issue is that women are not allowed in medical school, and Felicity gets turned down time and time again. When she finds out one of her idols is looking for an apprentice, she hightails it to Germany to try and see if he will take her on, and along the way gets roped up in an adventure just as magical and mysterious and fun as the one that Monty, Percy, and Felicity get dragged into in Gentleman's Guide. It's a little bit more pirates, a lot more petticoats. Mackenzi Lee has also told us that Felicity is canonically asexual, and if you read Gentleman's Guide, you know that Monty is a loud and proud bi character. His love interest Percy is gay, and all of those characters are back again in this one. There's also the addition of a character named Sim. She is an African pirate and also a practicing Muslim, and she tells Felicity in one scene that one day she does want to find a husband, settle down, have children, start a family, but she also shows interest in at least one female character, who I will not identify because no spoilers, but I love Sim very much. Mackenzi Lee has continued, you know, her amazing tradition of just packing in so much diversity and so much realistic representation of all different types of people who were a part of the history they often get erased from, and so it's really awesome and I loved it. And the same way where in Gentleman's Guide, Monty learned to kind of come to terms with the fact that he, although he has had a very difficult life, he has this sort of inherent privilege in every situation, being a white upper class man. The world before his love interest and the world before his younger sister were not the same world that he was living in. Despite all of his personal hardships, he had to come to terms with the fact that he was placed in an elevated position in life that just made things easier for him and other things harder for him to understand. Similarly, Felicity goes through a journey of self-discovery. I went through a phase when I was a teenager where I didn't want to touch anything pink. You could not get me in a dress to save my life. I would not wear makeup. I thought I was like cool for that. Felicity feels superior to feminine women because she wants something more. She has aspirations that women have never been able to achieve, and she thinks that the way to those aspirations is to throw away her femininity. While Felicity may not feel comfortable with a lot of explicitly feminine things, it doesn't make femininity the antithesis of scholarship or womanly success, and her friend Joanna specifically sort of exemplifies how you can be feminine and strong. And I think that's a really important lesson that a lot of us probably learned growing up, and a lot of girls are still learning today, I'm sure. And you know, Felicity kind of has to come to terms with the fact that she does have like a holier than thou complex about, you know, being a woman. She thinks she's a strong woman because she's not feminine, and you know, being feminine is a very womanly thing to be. I think a lot of girls turn their backs on other girls when they feel they don't conform to the societal presentation of their gender that is the norm, and they think that anyone who does is just not worth their time, and that's not true. You know, girly girls, tomboys, all of us, the spectrum of gender expression is so much wider than that, and you know, Felicity really has to come to terms with that, and I think that that's a really interesting journey to watch her along. This book is just as endearing and wonderful as its predecessor. Mackenzi Lee's voice and writing style is just so incredible. I was talking before about how much I love good prose. This has a great prose. Similarly to what I said about Claire LeGrande pulling off third person, Mackenzi Lee pulls off first person. Like, it is incredible. As far as purple books with girl power trios on a magical mystery go, these two are two of my absolute favorites. This book comes out October 18th. And before I wrap up, there are two other books I want to talk about. This is kind of an epic love story by Kheryn Calendar. This also comes out on October 18th. It is the story of Nathan Bird, who wants to write movies and falls in love with his childhood best friend when he moves back to town. I'm hesitant to take a definitive stance on this book and whether or not I think everyone should read it for two main reasons. The first being that Nathan's love interest, Ollie, is deaf hard of hearing. He's completely deaf in one ear and mostly deaf in the other. I didn't know that when I picked up the book, and I was over the moon. This is some of the very little sign language that I've retained. I was so excited to find out that the love interest for this book was deaf. I don't think I've ever read a YA book with a deaf love interest before, and how sad is that? As I am not a member of the deaf hard of hearing community, I don't think it's really my place to say. That being said, there's also some content within this book that really pushes the lines of being a YA book. I do think it's really important to be open and honest with kids about sex, especially kids who are getting around the age where they're going to want to engage in sexual activity. This book does not fade to black. I don't think it was done in a way that was pornographic, just to be clear. It was very anatomical and technical and meant, I think, to help people reading understand. This book reads like a rom-com. It had a really compelling romance plot, And I'm not usually one to go for romance like that, but the interesting thing was that Nathan felt throughout like happy endings were too big of a risk to pursue because most of the time it doesn't work out. And I thought that was really interesting and bleak. I did really enjoy this book. I'm just not sure if it's for everyone. And then the last book I wanted to mention, An Absolutely Remarkable Thing by Hank Green. Everyone in the bookish world has heard about this book and probably knows what it's about already. I didn't read it. I got an ARC from work. I let Julia read it before me. She's in Ireland right now, so she can't film a video telling you how she felt about it. I just wanted to give it a shout out because Julia told me that the main character is bisexual, and I think that that's great. So, you know, add it to your list of queer reads. It is out September. It doesn't have a specific date. It's someday in September. There are obviously a lot more diverse books coming out this fall. I so desperately tried to get my hands on a copy of Blanca and Roja by Anna Marie McLemore because she's one of my favorite authors. I actually went to the book buyer at work and I was like, listen, I know I don't usually do this, but can you get this for me? I'm just like racking my brain for all the fall releases I know about. There are a lot more. If you don't feel like waiting for these books to be released and you need a queer book in your hands like right now, I'm gonna attach below a link to my Queer Books for Cool Kids Twitter thread. All those books have been read by me and I can vouch for them. If you have a recommendation for me or any thoughts or questions about the books talked about in this video, please comment down below. Make sure to like and subscribe, and please check out Julia's Booktube channel because she's so much better at talking about books than I am.